It's time now for, I've been looking forward to this for a while, this week's pressure rankings. Owen, take it away.
Power rankings, not pressure rankings.
Pressure on me, downward pressure.
The power rankings are here, they're back. This is our last time before the championship to bring you up to speed on the most correct and perfect, flawless power rankings. Let's get this over and done with, from number 32 down to 1. At number 32 this week is the non-mover of London. At 31 is Waterford. Leitrim and Sligo dropping down to 30 and 29 respectively. Wexford are up to 28th. Carlow down to 27th. Louth's win at the weekend brings them up to 26th. And then finishing off that first page, slightly controversially, because this has been a deck that has been shuffled considerably over the course of the weekend. Wicklow are a non-mover. I just couldn't find a higher spot for them, which has pained me to say it, but I just couldn't find a higher spot for Wicklow as much as I tried. So they're staying there at 25. 24. Westmeath dropped down to 24. I just couldn't drop them down to 25. Just couldn't do it to Westmeath, maybe because Westmeath are also quite vociferous in their criticism of this. They're at 24. Longford up to 23. Obviously, they had that big win over Tip at the weekend. At 22, Fermanagh drop one spot after last weekend. They lost to Offaly at the weekend. Antrim, according to these rankings, the 21st best team in Ireland now. The big fallers this week. These guys were both in the top 8 or 9 at the end of last year. Tipperary and Cavan both down to 20th and 19th respectively. Risers though in Laois and Limerick. Laois kind of rising as a result of Tip and Cavan falling so considerably. And same story really for Limerick, although Limerick have had a good National League campaign. Down then, up after beating Laois by 7 points at the weekend. A really impressive result from them to stay in Division 2. Offaly also on the rise once again. They've won 4 games in the bounce this year. A really informed team. They're going to play Derry this weekend in Croke Park in a game that should actually be a bit of a cracker. That's your number 14 team, which is Derry. Another of the big fallers this week is County Meath. Probably the most talked about county on this particular slot. For a team that's ranked 13th in the country, why do we waste so much time? They're down in 13. Clare stay put at number 12. They lost at the weekend to Mayo. Cork, another riser or faller this week. Cork, they're down to 11th. And there they are, Jared, the moment you've been waiting for. Kildare.
Top 10, baby.
Number 10, just behind Roscommon.
Top 10. To the good people of Meath, all the way from Meath Hill, which is basically Monaghan, to South Drogheda, which is effectively Louth, to Bettystown, which is effectively Dublin, to Ashbourne, which is effectively Dublin, or kind of bang a Kildare off it, to the rolling flatlands in the middle of Meath. We say, screw you, babies, screw you. That one time that you beat us last year in, I don't know what the hell happened in the second half, completely fluky performance, you banged in all those goals, and we've been listening to nothing but jibber-jabber for essentially 12 months, 12 grim months of jibber-jabber from the people of Meath. Well, you can all go and shite. That's all I have to say to you guys, because Owen's power rankings finally, after all this time, are correct and unimpeachable. Woohoo!
This is like the season's over for Kildare now, really, isn't this? Is
oh,
like,
look, it doesn't matter. Division 1 football next season. Oh, banging on. I've been listening to Tommy banging on week in, week out, hijacking. We've got 2 of the greatest football analysts in perfect symmetry and concert. And Tommy's like, can we just talk a bit more about Meath? Can we just talk a bit more about Meath? And it's like, no, we can't. Meath are banned from the Paddy and Andy podcast from this point forward until they win Leinster. And then we should allow Tommy to have them talk about it again. But in the meantime, I mean, come on, like, they lose the game and all anybody's talking about afterwards is an incident. Fair enough. Okay, the incident's probably quite serious and we should talk about it and deal with it. But this was a Meath team who were Division 1 footballers. That's what we heard. This is a team who've been building for ages and ages and ages. And we had to listen to the nonsense that they were spouting about Kildare, and all of a sudden they couldn't even get it done, and all our best players going off injured.
You'll be delighted to hear as well that Meath and Kildare are being kept on opposite sides of the draw this year. So Kildare, they just have to be possibly Offaly, then Dublin to get to a Leinster final. Meath have to beat probably Longford, then Laois or Westmeath. So there's your Kildare Meath Leinster final pretty happily.
For what it's worth, I would give off a very good chance of beating Kildare in the championship the way things are going at the moment. Look, I think the point has been made again and again. You've got to be in Division 1 if you're going to be in any way a serious football county over a sustained period of time. And you know, we see the yo-yo teams, we see the teams who like Meath and Roscommon are now yo-yo teams, and Kildare need to be a team who yo-yos up and then doesn't come back down, because the benefits are absolutely clear to see in Mayo and in Monaghan, that you can bring players into the squad, and if they can survive in Division 1, they become seasoned inter-county footballers who are capable of competing at championship level. And I think that ultimately this year, particularly with no back door, if you're a Leinster county, nothing mattered except the league.
And I think that we can see that from the decision as well this weekend to actually play Offaly against Derry. From those two counties' perspectives as well, it's the league is all that matters, and that's a really good opportunity to try and put one final marker down and actually get a bit of silverware and come away from the season and say this is our progress, because while they've both been really good, they're not going to be Ulster or Leinster champions. I know saying that about Ulster champions is probably unwise given the events of last year, but it's probably not going to happen. I think the last weekend of football that we saw was this really important, it was a crazy weekend, and there was a sense maybe from counties like Mayo in particular where they will feel that they got away scot-free from being associated with Division 2, for example.
Yeah.
Like, it's half the amount of games. They went down to get promoted straight away, and they haven't really lost much progress. Same goes for Kildare. Now all of a sudden they're back in. Their opportunity to play Division 1 hasn't been wasted in the pandemic year. It's going to probably anyway. It's going to be a full league campaign next season, a full round of fixtures for them to actually test themselves against the best. And that's also why it was really important for Armagh to get the win at the weekend, to actually stay in this division, to actually beat Roscommon and hold on to their Division 1 status, because next year is where those gains will really be made by actually, from their perspective, to actually play Mayo and Kerry and Dublin. Which brings us nicely on to the top 8. So at number 8, Galway, the Fallers here, down 2 places.
Are Galway a little bit lucky to be still clinging on? Or is the game against Monaghan actually a really good game for them to have gone through and get that extra half an hour of football? I can't decide if the defeat is so crushing and, you know, Pádraig Joyce didn't speak to the media afterwards, or is that the type of thing that 2 weeks out from championship is exactly what you need?
Like, I think that in the context of the championship, it could be something to light a fire under them. Clearly what happened to them in the league last year was something that motivated them greatly when they came up against Mayo, because it was an entirely different performance we saw in the championship. But you can't be looking at this Galway project with too much of a short-term view, because we know that what they've done in terms of their quest for All-Irelands in the recent past hasn't resulted in them really coming close to an All-Ireland. I know that they did get to an All-Ireland semi-final that one time, but I'm not sure that Dublin really let them get very close to them that day at all, to be quite honest with you. So I do think this has to be a long-term view of what they do, and not having that Division 1 experience next year is going to be something that hurts them and does set them back. But as you say, maybe this is something that does light a fire under them. I do think, like Paddy Andrews was saying this on the show yesterday, that he would be astonished if Mayo don't win Connacht this year. They would certainly be my favourites as well. But I do think that this could be there could be a few hairy moments for them in that province this year, because they might come in just a little bit colder as a result of playing half a Division 2 campaign this year. And I do think that Galway will be motivated from what happened. Their one win in the league this year, Galway, was beating Roscommon by 6 points. I would have Galway, as you can see in the rankings here, as firmly as the second best team in Connacht, and maybe a ball bounces their way this year against Mayo. And I know they came pretty close. They were pretty unlucky down the home stretch against them last year. Maybe they can cause an upset. So I wouldn't be engraving Mayo's name into the Connacht Trophy just yet. I do think Galway could cause an upset there. But they are down to 8 because it was a poor league campaign, no getting away from that. Monaghan, though, up. They leapfrogged them naturally after beating them at the weekend. They're up to 7th place. And this has been a good league campaign for Monaghan, I think, all things considered.
I just think that we don't give Monaghan football enough credit for the per capita numbers they have, the quality of football they have, the skill set they have, the excitement when you watch Monaghan play football. Like, invariably, they're trying to do something when they are in possession of the ball that's aggressive and attacking, and they are aggressive when you don't have the ball. And like, whatever organisation they've put in place in that county when it comes to running football, like, every other county in Ireland should be up there just watching. What do you do? How do you do it? What's going on? Why are you so good?
Yeah, And obviously there was just great scenes. Banty obviously with his band during this league campaign, celebrating in the nice check shirt, the Matt LeBlanc shirt at the weekend. Like, I mean, they still have so much quality in a varying degree of positions. That score from Conor McManus late on to actually force the game into the extra time was a brilliant score, and you just never thought that he wasn't going to nail it when he got the ball in that position. Jack McCarron obviously is somebody that people have kept an eye on over the last couple of years and has always been top class. Same goes for Conor McCarthy. So their forward talent is brilliant.
Do you know what the population of Monaghan is?
It is 50,000.
60-ish.
Okay, close. Which is like that's the Division 4 population playing Division 1 football.
Swords, Tala, bigger, much bigger.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like
amalgamate Monaghan and Cavendish.
But whatever they're doing, it's amazing. 61,386 is what it says in what census? I can't even. 2016 census.
It's always the same. They just go back to the county and it always just clocks up the exact same result. Number 6, Armagh are up 1 to 6th spot. Just couldn't move them any higher. Maybe they will feel that they should be ahead of Tyrone, but Tyrone to beat them in this league campaign. Armagh, like beating Roscommon by 9 points at the weekend, was significant.
From 6 or 7 points down at the start. Like, Roscommon started like a house on fire, and then Armagh very calmly just decided, okay, we understand what we're going to do here, and horsed through. I
feel sometimes that you need to strike while the iron is hot as a footballing county sometimes. So, like,
smash and grab.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, didn't Roscommon beat Armagh in the Division 2 final last year? That they were the two that went up, but Roscommon beat them anyway. And it was kind of like, right, Armagh are going up, but Roscommon are still better than Armagh. And whereas on the evidence of the weekend, it's like Armagh, they've overtaken Roscommon over the last couple of months. They've really made that stride forward, and it feels that if they'd lost that game at the weekend, they might have got into this endless loop of being a yo-yo team, kind of like how Roscommon are, how Cavan, when they eventually get promoted over the next couple of years again, will return to be. And I'm just not sure if there's any joy in that, if there's any hope of actually winning, of contending for an All-Ireland in that. Whereas with Armagh, they're kind of on this upward trajectory at the moment where they're probably thinking, how high can this thing go for us? Like, they may not win an Ulster Championship this year. Like, they were desperately disappointing against Donegal in that competition last year. But on the evidence so far, they've improved quite a bit. I think that they are the one team that you can really make a case that they've made a big step forward from 2020 on a whole range of levels. Yeah, and that's again, like, if there was qualifiers or Super 8s or some round robin or some more games, more than one game, they're precisely the demographic of team who would benefit from those, and we would actually get to see how close they are to the top tier at the moment, because they're clearly not in the top tier. Just out, I would say just outside it, yeah. And well, I suppose the top tier is 2 counties really at the moment. Tyrone are number 5, a non-mover. Donegal, a non-mover at number 4. Like, Tyrone, obviously, I thought that they'd be dropping this week, to be honest. But I think the fact that they've actually beaten Armagh already this year maybe is saving them a little bit. They were very, very poor on Saturday. Donegal losing by 4 points against Dublin. Nobody's going to drop as a result of that. Mayo, a non-mover at 3. We've always made this point that they're being completely insulated from real criticism over the last month. I will totally accept that, but we will see during the Connacht Championship whether or not they're still at last year's level. Yeah, I think that, like, having a Division 2 team above those other teams, particularly when, like, Clare nearly caught them at the weekend. I think we're grandfathering Mayo in on the basis of the performances over the last decade, and to my mind, this shooing them in for the Connacht title at the moment, I'm not doing that. I actually think that when you consider last year, the turnaround between the league game and the Connacht Championship game in winter, I would not be at all surprised, and I don't think it's an upset if Galway beat them. Like, Mayo would be slight favourites for that game because, again, they've been grandfathered into the position of favouritism on the basis of historic results over the last half decade or so. But honestly believe that that's a 50-50 game, and really Galway with their Division 1 and having come through battle-hardened. Like, what did Mayo learn about themselves in that game against Clare at the weekend? It's that if we take our eye off the ball, we're going to get absolutely annihilated. Like, what did Mayo learn from last year's All-Ireland semi-final, which was essentially a bit of a cakewalk for them in the end in the fog? I don't know. I'm not sure. And there have been, like, a number of those moments. Like, I mean, they come back after the break for the pandemic last year and they end up getting relegated. They sneak past Galway in Connacht, and they come up against a team that is now playing Division 4 football in the All-Ireland semi-final before coming up short against Dublin. And it did start very well against Dublin. I think the one thing that they learned, and they're constantly learning, is that Cillian O'Connor is going to go down in history as one of the greatest forwards of all time, and is the most important player in this Mayo team. I think that there was always a sense that he was the most important scoring forward that they had. Then he became the most important forward, and now he's the most important player, bar none.
And limped off at the weekend.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Like, there's definitely, for me, there's an asterisk beside Mayo at 3. I understand why you've done it, but I actually, like, let's say Cillian O'Connor's injured. Let's say we know now that he's injured and he's going to miss a month of football.
Well, then if Michael Murphy's fit, if we can assume that about that, and if Colin McShane is fit, then I would say that they would be almost down to 5 at that point. But the problem is that it seems that injuries are part and parcel of every team at the moment, and it would be unfair to just drop Mayo down a few places.
He's their most important player, you've just said.
Well, Michael Murphy is Donegal's most important player, and I think Colin McShane is Tyrone's most important player. So, like, they're all missing their most important player, or they have doubts about their most important player. And for those 3 counties, that is the difference between them being a contender or not, as far as I'm concerned, because they need to be fully loaded if they're going to stand a chance against Dublin. I do think, while we're saying that Kerry and Dublin are a tier above everybody else, Kerry are 2, Dublin are at 1, by the way, I do think Kerry are also in the same boat as Mayo, Donegal and Tyrone, where they need to be fully loaded against Dublin just to get that first win. If they manage to get over Dublin and win the All-Ireland this year, then maybe you can make a different argument next year, but they need to stay injury-free, and it's been something that Peter Keane has said a lot over the league, that staying injury-free was his main aim, and it seems, touch wood, that's exactly what they've managed to do. There hasn't been the Cillian O'Connor type injury where you've seen it mid-game, or a John Small type injury where somebody has got injured. But they're in at number 2, Dublin are in at number 1, and I think the weekend would definitely accelerate this notion that the 2 are pulling away from the rest, and maybe the ghost of 2020 means that they won't be caught when it comes to that All-Ireland matchup this year.
The gap is closed, no doubt about it. I think Kerry are right there with Dublin at the moment, and I think if you were to coldly analyse the amount of talent and caps that have been stripped out of that Dublin team, and look, until we see Cluxton in the championship, we haven't seen him play this year.
Yeah,
you know, he was off playing with the club at the weekend. Fair enough. Maybe he's fully fit. Maybe that's just, like, I'd like to have seen him play 1 game in the league. I mean, okay, granted, the Leinster Championship is a glorified league campaign for the Dubs, and they don't need to worry about anything in the Leinster Championship, particularly if Meath are going to be suffering suspensions and Kildare suffering the injuries. So let's wait and see. But I think Kerry, I think you can make the case in the power rankings after the league that they're joint top. They shared the league. I would say Kerry's league campaign was actually, in the end, better than Dublin's.
They scored more and conceded less.
I know that, and they drew in the game that they played. So, like, I don't think anymore this is 1 and 2. I think this is 1-1A.
I think on league form, yes, I would agree with you. I just think that the Cluxton thing is just unavoidable. I think that the way Fenton was played that day in Thurles is unavoidable. He'll have a different role, and that's your 2 most important players. But you can't get away from the fact that this Dublin team has been stripped of its greats. Once you have the greatest team of all time, you can't not be a little bit reliant on them. And Aidan O'Rourke I pointed this out in his column yesterday as well, that those defensive talents and the kind of chipping away of them over the last couple of years when it comes to their ageing legs and to the retirements, that will result in this Dublin defence being more leaky. Now, the stats will always show every defence to be more leaky at the moment because this was played in extremely favourable conditions, this league campaign. But I think it is hammered home by the fact that this Dublin defence maybe isn't where it once was, which was like all-time great. So it's not saying they're bad or anything. It's just they're not an all-time great potentially defence anymore. The previous Dublin defence was.
Yeah, absolutely. 12 minutes past 9. That is this week's edition of the Power Rankings. Feel free to dispute or complain. Unless you're from me, then we don't want to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or of course, you can get us in the comments on YouTube, and many of you already have.